Mauricio Pochettino dropped his Nations League roster for the U.S. men this week. Just under a year till the World Cup, or just over a year rather, to the World Cup 2026. So kind of with every roster release, a little bit more importance. Not a whole lot of games to go for the American national team before the biggest competition on the planet. So with the Nations League, the semifinal is coming at us on March 20th. So, just was it next Thursday? The U.S. will take on Panama. And so you see it on the screen here, the 23 man roster. As you look at this, as this came across your screen, Jason, what kind of jumps off the page to you?
Well, okay, let's go through this position group by position group. I have no issues with the goalkeepers. It could be Ethan Horvath instead of Zach Steffen. I don't know that there's I don't know why the preference for Steffen over Horvath.
Cheaper flight.
Maybe that's what it is. Less adjustment, less issues with travel. Maybe, I don't know. And we expect Turner to start. I think Schulte's probably the number 2, and then Steffen is 3. You're never going to see your third goalkeeper unless an absolute disaster happens. Not worried about it. Defenders. What stands out for me is that looks like Pochettino is putting some stock in Austin Trusty and Cameron Carter-Vickers playing together at Celtic and maybe in the Champions League. Maybe that's been impressive to him. I'm a little surprised by that. I don't know that a lot of people had Cameron Carter-Vickers on their roster. Trusty's a mild surprise. The guys, look, there's no Miles Robinson in this team. I mean, that I think a lot of people will be, okay, it's fine. He's an MLS guy. We don't really want him anyway, and maybe we'll come to the MLS guys and the question of MLS players, but I think it's a mild surprise. Fossey, no surprise there. Mark McKenzie has played very well in France recently. I think that's a deserved call-up, although that's not always the first concern when you talk about a national team trying to win meaningful games. Tim Ream's still in the team. He is a center back, or is he a left back? With Charlotte, he's a left back. With the national team, is he a center back? Will he start? Chris Richards, absolutely fine there. Of course, Jedi Robinson's in the team, and Joe Scally is your right back. Serginho Dest back playing again for PSV Eindhoven, but not healthy enough in time to make the roster. It wasn't on that 60-man preliminary roster, so he's not here. Midfielders, Adams, no problem. Cardoso, no problem. McKennie, no problem. Giovanni Reyna, little bit of a question, obviously, but I think it's impossible to leave him out because of the talent. I think that it's really just hard to make that argument. Tanner Tessman is the one that stands out to me because I do think, I guess maybe it was down to Aiden Morris or Tanner Tessman, and it seems as though Pochettino prefers Tessman. I really, really, really like Aiden Morris, and I think he's played very well. He did have an injury not that long ago that maybe slowed down some of his momentum. But again, I'm not going to get too in the weeds about worrying whether he picked Tessman or Morris. Diego Luna is the name everybody's focused on here. Clearly, and we'll get to it with the forwards too, clearly, Mauricio Pochettino took a lot out of the January camp. Mm-hmm. We were all here poo-pooing the January camp, talking about how it doesn't mean a lot, and who cares, and it's camp cupcake. Or
that's the cycle. That's the cycle, though. We lambast it every single time, but there every now and again something comes from it, and I think this is it.
Yeah, I mean, so as Nate is saying, so happy about the Luna call. Big balls, which of course is what Pochettino called him or said about him when he broke his nose and continued playing in January. This is a sign of what Poch values. He knows he needs some creative players. Diego Luna is not a winger, right? He's not a wide player. And I'm not sure, I guess he does kind of fit into the point of a triangle midfield in this setup, although Weston McKennie is obviously going to be a two-way player. And you're asking probably Tyler Adams, who's been very, very good for Bournemouth and is back completely healthy, to be your shield and to do that job by himself. So, I mean, if you look at this, you're kind of thinking about depth. It's Adams with Cardoso behind him. It's probably Reyna with Luna behind him, and it's McKennie with Tessman behind him. Right? Those are the kind of depth chart positions there. You got 6 players for 3 spots, 2 at every spot in that midfield. Forwards, Patrick Agyemang. Again, January camp stud. Gets an opportunity to play meaningful matches potentially. This is also about Pepe being hurt. This is also about Balogun being hurt. This is also about nobody else kind of emerging. Josh Sargent absolutely has to be in this team based on his club form. Right? Is he needs to score for the national team so he can put to rest all that nonsense about how he hasn't scored since, 2019? Like, it's true. It's a fact. I don't know if it's reflective necessarily of his talent. So he needs to step up if he gets this opportunity. Musa listed as a forward. Now, again, we just went through the midfielders. 6 players for 3 spots. You can see the starter and the piece behind him, the player that backs them up. Yunus Musa is a midfielder for me, Robert. So unless he's being flared out wide to play as a winger because we're short on wingers, and maybe you have to have him in the team, he is an established national teamer, because I think the name that's not here that people are surprised by is Alex Zendejas. Club America has been one of the best players on the attacking end of the field in Mexico for a while now. So where is Alex Zendejas? Well, it looks like maybe Zendejas is sacrificed because Musa needs to be in the team. And again, Musa listed as a forward is a surprise. Pulisic, of course. Josh Sargent, we talked about. Tim Weah, of course. And then Brian White. And Nate is saying, who is Brian White?
He is the American leading scorer in MLS the last year or two, right?
He is. He is the top American goal scorer in Major League Soccer. He plays his soccer way up there in British Columbia.
And that's why you don't know.
Vancouver Whitecaps just signed a new contract. He had his moment in the January camp as well. Mm-hmm. And again, this is more evidence that Pochettino really values what those players, White, Ajimang, and Luna, did in the January camp. This is you might say, well, what does that matter? And again, those are MLS players. And we have a specific and sizable group of U.S. men's national team fans who refuse to see any value in any MLS player, period, full stop.
Yeah, and you never want to work in absolutes. I mean, especially in a people business, sports, soccer, people business, and you don't want to take a blanket approach to everything. I mean, just because, someone might be talented, but they work for an out-of-favor company doesn't make that person not talented,
well,
right?
Okay, so, and again, so much of this is circumstance.
Yeah.
Like, if Ricardo Pepi and Valorant Balogun are healthy and playing, is Ajimang in this team and is White in this team?
Probably not.
Probably not. In fact, maybe there'd be a question about whether Sargent or Pepi or Sargent or Balogun. I mean, I would take Pepi because of his goal-scoring prowess, but he's not playing consistent enough minutes where you're just 100%, yep, he's locked in, let's go. He would be in my team. He would be in most people's team, but there still would be a little bit of a question. Right? There aren't that many guys, unfortunately, in this part of the field who are in mid-season form. Ajimang's not in mid-season form. Brian White's not in mid-season form. Who are scoring goals and are starters. Right? Ajimang is a starter in the early part of a season, hasn't scored a goal yet. Yunus Musa, again, not really a forward, doesn't score a lot of goals. Not a goal scorer, and not even a winger at AC Milan. Christian Pulisic, of course. Josh Sargent banging in goals. In the second division in England,
yep.
I think it matters. I think it's great, but it's the second division of England. You might ding him for that. We know about Timothy Weah and Brian White, again, just like Ajimang. Early going in the season, not really in form. It is thin. It is just thin. And I will like it to be better, but I think that Pochettino is recognizing I'd rather have guys I know a little bit about and I've seen and I know what they can do if I put them in certain circumstances and I have a profile on them, then maybe grab somebody like Damian Downs, for example, who I think just had surgery on his hand. So that's probably not even a player who would have been called up. He might have been called up if completely healthy, but it's not even a question because he wasn't available. He's the dual national who plays at Köln in Germany in the second division. There are a couple of guys out there like that. But
yeah, what about the Union Berlin dual national kid that was talking about also? I was curious if he was going to make this list. So kind of like in a little bit of a retrospective here. So looking at this list on screen of the players and the positions you just outlined, so are really only half surprises are Zendejas not included in the forwards,
sure.
Aiden Morris not being included in the mids.
I wouldn't call that a surprise.
Maybe or a debatable decision.
Okay, sure.
And then in the defenders, this is the center back is really like the thin aspect. It is cool that there is two, a club center back pairing. Does the center back pairing from club translate, or does Mackenzie slip in there and supersede that kind of club chemistry? Where would you rate? The three here between Mackenzie, CCV, and Richards and Trusty,
Well, that's
Where
four,
we,
but
yeah, I saw. Yeah, that is four. So does the pair that played together in club supersede
no.
the
I mean,
other
not
two?
not to start. No, I think Cameron Carter Vickers and Austin Trusty are backups, and more than likely, I still think it's probably Tim Ream and Chris Richards, and but
It's
then
so
again, Tim Ream is also a player who can play at left back. There's lots of center backs here. Again, how you rank them is a question, but there's lots of
You-
center backs here.
Are
Well,
they
there
all?
aren't.
Would you call them all like roughly at the same level?
Yeah, that's probably a fair assess. I mean, I think Richards is ahead of CCV, Austin Trusty, and McKenzie. I think Richards is ahead of all of them. I mean, Tim Ream is a question because of his age and because he's now not playing center back anymore in Major League Soccer. So I think you could bring that up as an issue. Um, you know, Whether or not you need to play a left-footed center back alongside Richards, and how that plays out. You have one out-and-out left back in Jedi Robinson, and you have Joe Scally and Marlon Fossey as your other fullbacks, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Tim Ream looks like maybe he's a depth piece at the left back position behind Jedi Robinson if you need him. Maybe he's not a starter. Maybe he stays on the bench because you might need him in reserve at left back should something happen to Jedi Robinson, which would open the door for somebody like McKenzie or Cameron Carter Vickers, or I suppose Trusty to slip in there. I mean, I'm anxiously waiting to see what Pochettino does with this lineup against Panama next Thursday.
Yeah, next Thursday in California, SoFi Stadium, which I wasn't quite sure was wide enough for the soccer. That's a good point, Nate, because we were talking about Musa at forward and whatnot. There are some utility players in here.
Yeah.
So Musa can play multiple positions,
It's
forward,
possible.
mid. Weah can do the same, and then Reyna could probably move to a forward type, or maybe a wide forward position, and then
He could,
Musa
I
comes
suppose.
back.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think based on history and what we've seen already, I think it's unlikely that Tim Weah plays at fullback unless there's a disaster and a crisis.
There isn't enough goal scorers to push him back, I think.
There
in
are
here.
not enough wingers. There aren't enough wingers in this team. You have three center forwards in Ajamang, Sargent, and White, and then you have Christian Pulisic, Timothy Weah, out-and-out wingers who can play on opposite sides from one another and often do, and then Musa, who is not a winger but is being listed as a forward, I think because of that thing. Now, again, would you rather have Reyna flared out there, or would you have Luna flared out there instead of those players? I think that is a question. It's imperfect. It's definitely imperfect. And, again, I think it's really difficult to predict what Pochettino's lineup is going to look like because of those issues.
Some comments coming in here. Looks like we already asked Nate who Brian White is. Some Thomas Dupree kind of saying some bad words about national team fans.
You don't have to acknowledge Thomas and that particular comment, Rob. We can move forward.
And I guess comments. Who would you like to see in this roster selection that wasn't included here? And then who would you like to see in your starting 11? Put that in the comments here. But
yeah, who's the player who's missing? I definitely think. And let's see. I saw someone.
Zach
mention,
says surprised Dest isn't included. Okay, you went to Nate. Would have taken Zendejas over who? Are you talking about? Brian White here.
Maybe it could have been Brian White. Again, you have two center forwards in Ajamang and Sargent. Why bring in a third one in White? Don't know exactly. As for what Zach said, and we did mention this in passing, too soon for Sergio Dest. Back on the field at
Great to
PSV
see him
Eindhoven.
back. Great to see him back because this team is way more dynamic with Dest in the lineup.
Yeah, too soon in the sense that he was not on the 60-man preliminary roster, which you needed to be on to be included in this group. And I think that's just because they didn't know about his status. So good for Sergio Dest, but ultimately still too soon.
We shall see United States men's national team taking on Panama in the semifinal of the Nations League next Thursday. So looking forward to that. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Morning Kickaround on YouTube.com. We blasted past our 1,000 subscriber goal, and we are working towards 5,000. So if you're watching this, kudos to you on your magnificent taste in morning soccer entertainment. But, click the subscribe button and then tell some of your people to do the same. You can follow along social media at mkickaround, at X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. and then write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. Or if you're able to, thankful to all who have already done so, ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. You can donate a few dollars, large or small amounts. You can enter in whatever amount you'd like, one-time donation or a regularly occurring donation can be made there. And thank you to all who have done so. Thanks to those who will do so in the future. We kind of got our legs under us a little bit. And now we're trying to make this thing sustainable and able to grow it. We are, just getting going, and we really want this to be one of the centers of the American soccer conversation. And it really takes you joining in and participating and supporting to make that happen.